Okay, welcome. Hello, Beady friends. I am Meredith Roddy from Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and I think you can see the waggy tail right behind me. You'll see Finn in just a second. He's here to keep us company today as well. So welcome to the Love is All Around necklace class. So I am teaching on behalf of Beadalon for the Michaels Community Classroom. And as you are watching the class today, please feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat, and Yvette from Beadalon will be here to answer that. She will also be here giving links to products and writing down the instructions and kind of any questions that you have or want to interact with. I can see the comments as they're scrolling around, so hopefully I'll be able to address everything in class. But this class is for the Michaels Online Community Classroom, and it is being recorded. So if there's something that I go over a little bit too quickly or something that you just didn't quite gather, you have to step away for a moment. You can always go back in probably about 24 to 48 hours. The class will be posted on the Michaels Community Classroom site. And I always remember, or I remind people that there are a ton of amazing classes by makers all across the craft community. So pretty much anything that you want to learn how to do in this crazy pandemic quarantine time that we're all living through together, you can find an instructor and a good class in the archives of the community classroom. So without further ado, I think we're going to get started. We have a nice crowd in here. And again, I also love knowing not only where everybody is from, and of course today, whether or not you have snow on the ground or on the way, but is this your first class with me? I'm always curious to know if people have kind of, if they're just starting on their jewelry making journey because they saw a project that appealed to them, or you're in the process of collecting all of the skills that you possibly can, or if you just like hanging out with me. All good reasons to join us for class today. And I want to welcome all of my old students and new students as well. So our class today, we're going to go over a lot of basic beading skills, basic crimping, different types of wire. So really kind of an introductory beading class, but we're also going to talk a little bit about resin. And I am by no means, this is my disclaimer at the beginning, Beadalon does not sell a resin line. I am by no means a resin expert, but I am a very curious crafter. And I like trying new materials and trying new techniques and kind of playing around with things and seeing if I can learn how to do them, learn how to incorporate them into my design work and my jewelry making, and then see if it's something that I'm passionate about and really enjoy doing. So one of the things that I have found with resin is that you can make some really neat neat pieces, neat dangles, neat, as we call them in the Beadalon office, neat doodads. But the challenge that I had been having is taking those doodads to the next level. So I see a lot of online projects making them into earrings or maybe putting them on a chain to dangle. But I wanted to take my resin doodad kind of to the next level and to turn it really into a piece of jewelry rather than just being a thing. And I know that there are a lot of beaders out there who are using the resin technique and who are making things out of resin, because I don't know about you all, but in my local Michaels that I am at way too often, way more often than I should be for my pocketbook's sake. But our resin aisle is almost always shopped out. So products come in, products go out right away. So I know a lot of people are playing around with it, and I highly recommend going back into that Michaels Community Classroom YouTube archive and checking out some of the classes that our resin experts are teaching on how to use on how to actually make the resin. We're not going over that today. What we're going to do is take some of the pieces that I have made And you might see them and be like, oh my gosh, Meredith, you did that all completely wrong. But the takeaway is making a beautiful pendant or a beautiful component or a beautiful piece of jewelry. And instead of just making a pair of earrings or putting it on a chain, we're going to do some beading with it also. And the most important thing is we are going to learn how to use these guys, which are, I'm going to show them again as soon as we go to the other camera, which are the pinch bails. And we're going to talk a lot about bails and about attaching things. And depending on how many questions we have, we might go meandering off on a couple of different directions today as well. So if you do have any questions about bails in any capacity, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. And if I don't notice it going by, Yvette will give me a little virtual tap, and I will be sure to address that. So Lindsay is here moderating from Michael's for us. And Lindsay, I think we are ready to take that overhead camera and start talking about the materials that we are going to be using today. I'm trying to get that glare. Nope, I made it worse. Try to get that glare. Nope, still making it worse. There we go. It's always a challenge with the lighting here in the Beadalon home studio. So for this project, if we are going to make this beautiful Love is All Around necklace, I'm going to tell you about the supplies that we are going to be using today. So the first thing, and you can see my Beadalon findings pack is getting very, very bare. There are usually a lot more findings, but this is one of those jewelry findings packs, the supplies that I use all the time in my projects. In here are jump rings, spring ring clasps, lobster claw clasps, tags, really everything that you need to get started making jewelry is in this little case right here. So that's the first thing that I'll be using today. So then, of course, I'm going to need my wire. So the wire that I am going to be using today is 19 strand 018 bright wire. Now, oh goodness, was it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now, I did a whole class called something like the 5 things you should never do while making jewelry. And I definitely, as a personal plug and a bit of advice for people in any stage of your jewelry making journey, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch that video, I highly recommend it. It is a soup to nuts, top to bottom, everything that you need to know about crimping, about matching your crimp beads and crimp tubes to your wire, about what all of the different strands of wire mean. Everything that you might have a question about, I cover in that class. So little plug. And I see a question. I'm going to explain how those tags are used because we will be using them in our project today. So I'm using 19 strand, which is a nice middle of the road wire, and an 018, which is a nice middle of the road diameter. And you always want to make sure that you fill up your holes, the holes of your beads, as much as possible. And I talk a lot about that in that video as well. And then because I'm using 0.018 wire, I'm going to use a size number 2 crimp tube. And I don't have those out right now, so I'm going to have to grab my crimp tube. Oh, here it is. I knew it should have been right here. I have my clever little case that I keep all of my crimp tubes in. And these are the number 2 crimp tubes from the variety pack, which I love having all of the different sizes that I need. And then I mentioned again the pinch bail pendants. And these are really the star of our show today. And there are a couple of different varieties of pinch bail pendants and different mechanisms by which they work. But this is a variety pack that has several different sizes. And just to demonstrate really quickly before we get going, this is what it will come out of the pack looking like. And to get this guy open, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and gently put them into that pinch bail closed. So we don't do that motion with pliers very often. We don't generally put our pliers in anything closed. We usually use them open to do things. But in this case, we're going to put them right in here closed and then gently open them. Let's watch what we're doing here. Gently open them. And so now those jaws are open to be able to attach something in there. And this little prong right here happens to be just the perfect size to coordinate to calibrate with the holes that are left behind when you do your resin in the resin molds. Wonderful, happy coincidence. It's not really a coincidence, but they do work perfectly. So, and in order to close that bail, which we're going to show in a moment or two, you would just reverse that motion and come in here, and gentle is the name of the game with this. And you can open and close them a couple of times, but you don't want to make a habit of opening and closing because this is a thin piece of metal, right? And eventually after you open and close a piece of metal enough times, it will break. Sometimes you want it to, but in this case, I'm sure that we do not want it to. Another thing that I'm going to mention now while I'm thinking of it, because I don't want to forget, is sometimes I will actually take my cutters and come in here and cut this top part off. Because one of the things that I feel like it's, I don't know, one of the darker sides of jewelry making is it can sometimes be difficult to make sure that what you are hanging hangs the right way. So what am I talking about? So if you look at this, and you look at this pendant that I made, and luckily you're not looking at it too close. It's not bad. It's just not great. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to come in here, and you can even squeeze this with your fingers. Actually, watch what I'm doing. You can actually squeeze this closed with your fingers. You don't need that tool. But if I want this to hang on a necklace this way, that piece is perfect because my wire is going to go through here where my awl is going through. But what if I want it to hang like this on a pair of earrings, or my ear wire is, the loop on my ear wire is facing a different direction? Then I need the hole to be going through this way, and I don't need this part on the top. So I can just cut that right off and not even worry about it. For the necklace that I'm going to be making today, everything is calibrated and facing the right way. But it's just one of those things that I've never heard talked about in any classes that I have participated in. But it's just one of those things that you always have to be cognizant of, is making sure your rings are facing the right way. And if they're not, this little guy right here, maybe you don't quite, it doesn't quite work with your design element, right? That can just snip right off. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to pull this up just a little bit and grab my safety glasses / my seeing eyes, and just go ahead and cut that right off, right? Just like that, just comes right off. Wasn't hard, didn't need anything more than my good cutters for it. And so now if I wanted to just add this with a jump ring or a spring ring or I don't know, something else, I can do that. So bails, very versatile, and we'll keep coming back around to the bails. Okay, so now I have my bail here, and I think, let's see, we are still working through our materials list. I got a little sidetracked on bales, but while we're talking to them, I think it's very important to go over all of the different pieces and parts of the bale. So we are also going to need for this project some crimp covers. This is the crimp cover variety pack that you'll find in Michael's, and it comes with my favorite crimp covers. If those of you who know me know that these, of course, would be my favorite crimp covers because they are the sparkly. They're not called the sparkly crimp covers. They're called the sparkle crimp covers, but in my world, they're the sparkly crimp covers. And then we also have these corrugated ones over here that kind of have these fun textured lines. And then 2 sizes of regular smooth crimp covers. And mine have gotten a little mixed up, but that's how you know it's well loved and well used. So we got the crimp covers, crimp tubes, and then I don't mention on the materials list that was sent, but I did grab some wire guardians to use for this project, because if we're gonna go all the way, we may as well show all of the good ways of finishing off and crimping the ends of our necklace. And then of course for tools, what we're going to need, this is kind of the standard tools that I always put on my tools list. You'll need 2 pliers. Here I have a bent chain nose pliers and a regular chain nose pliers. These are to open and close our jump rings. We'll need a nipper tool, and then we are going to use, of course, the standard crimping plier. And once again, I will mention, go back and watch that 5 things you should never do while making jewelry, while making beaded jewelry video, because you'll know why using the standard crimpers is the most important thing. Okay, so I actually, for this project, laid everything out on a bead board. I know, I usually am not a bead board user, but after watching Sarah Ellis's class on using a bead board, I guess that was probably a couple weeks ago now too. You can certainly find that one in the Beadalon community classroom. See how I do that? Always going back and recommending all of the amazing classes that we've done. And it reminded me that the bead board is actually a really good tool for beading. I think that, and I will speak for myself, the more beading that I have done, the more I have gotten away from using a bead board, but it is really a very valuable design tool. The very least of which is, see how nicely I have everything organized. I have my resin pendants here. I have my findings right here. I have my design made up here. Like, why don't I use a bead board all the time? I don't know. I think it's going to be my new 2021 February or March resolution is to start designing with a bead board, because it really does allow you to know how long your necklace is going to be. And then for a necklace like I have here, where I've used 3 different sizes of beads, it allows me to proportion them out. So what I would have done, I do have it strung, but before I strung it, I proportioned everything out. And I'm just going to bring this right down so we can see these little heart beads on the sides. I had originally conceived of this as a Valentine's Day project, but I feel like Valentine's and love is really a whole theme of February. So a happy belated Valentine's Day to all of my beady friends. But what you'll notice with these hearts is you need to make sure that they are directionally going the right way, which is why a bead board is very helpful as well when you're using directional beads. Because if I had just strung this up without thinking, I very easily could have done one bead one way on this side. But if I had kept that same way of doing the beads, it would have been upside down over here. So just those little things that you might not always inherently think of top of mind really become obvious when you have your design laid out. And you can certainly do that on a beading mat, no problem. But on the bead board, you have the channel, you have the markers, you have the measurements, all of that stuff. So you can see this is the necklace that I put together before, and I already have it strung up because really, do we need to see me stringing up 18 inches of beads? No, we do not need to do that. But I do have down here my pendant, and I want to talk a little bit about how I constructed excuse me, this pendant, because you will see my pointing device under here. And let's see the best way to do this. I'm just going to lift this up and hope nothing falls out. I think you can see here, there is a little bead hiding right underneath here. And in my original design, I did not do that bead. So you can see that bead is not there. And what has ended up happening, pop this up just a little bit, is when this necklace is worn, it's not going to lay nicely with this bail. So again, one of those kind of little things that you don't necessarily think about when you are constructing jewelry is the actual engineering of your jewelry piece. So for the photograph that Yvette made, she made a beautiful photograph, and it came in here perfectly. And even as I'm holding it, you can see that bail is nestled in between those two beads perfectly. However, with wear, let me see if I can simulate a wearing situation. Of course, it's not going to do it now. Let's see. I'm simulating the wearing situation. What will end up happening is it will get kind of all janked up in here, and it's not going to lay nicely. But if you could add some seed beads in here. You could add, gosh, I don't even know. This just happened to be the smallest bead on this strand of beads. And this is what's left of the strand. But I'm using the glass faceted red beads, item 594103. And these are great because it comes with 4 strands of graduated beads. And so I used did I use the smallest or the second smallest? I used the smallest. And all that does is just take up that extra room so that this is going to lay nicely. And I didn't realize that actually when I first made the project, but when it came back to me after Yvette photographed it, I realized that I needed to do a little something else to really make that lay nicely. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have your first trial, while it might look nice, the construction might need a little bit of tweaking. So we did that today, and I added that extra bead right in there, and you can't see it, but it's just part of that engineering of the design that's going to make it lay even better. So then all you need to do, and then following the instructions, I did, let me make sure I'm getting my numbers right. I did 17 of the second smallest beads. Those are the 4 millimeter beads. And then I did 14 of the 6 millimeter beads. And then I did, just making sure. So then I did 11, the pendant, 11 more, and then 14, and then 17. I'm just checking on my instructions to make sure that I'm giving the right counts. And if I did this again, would I change those counts? Probably, knowing me. But then in between each of those sections, I just added a little heart. I just thought that it added a little something nice to the design. Now, of course, down here, I haven't put my pendant on yet, because when I was in theory thinking about how I was going to teach the class, I was going to show adding the pendant at this point, but I did a little spoiler alert in the beginning. So I'm just going to take this pendant out, and you can see I just kind of bent that out of shape. And I'm going to put it on right here. And again, so super easy. All I need to do is line up that peg with the hole in that resin pendant that I made. And then I just use my fingers and I press it down into place. And I'm not particularly strong with my fingers. If you wanted to come through or to come back in with your chain nose pliers and give it an extra squeeze, you can. Just be careful that you don't squeeze it up here. Don't squeeze it up here, because you can squeeze the bail and get it out of shape, and then not so pretty. But if you just give it a gentle squeeze right down at the bottom, no problem. And like I said, I had a lot of fun with the resin, just kind of putting in the little embellishments that come along with it. It's really fun. But again, once you have a beautiful resin doodad, what are you going to do with it, right? Let's make it into a beautiful piece of jewelry. So now I have my design strung up on my 19 strand wire. And if you had 7 strand or 49 strand, that would be okay. Also, it's just going to drape a little bit differently. And here on the end, I have my my bead stoppers to make sure that when I pick this up, the beads don't go falling all over the place. And now I'm ready to start my finishing, right? See how quickly class goes when you're not watching me string up all of these beads. So now all we need to do is we are going to open up our crimp tubes. And that's another thing that the bead board affords you, is the opportunity to kind of have everything in one place and not rolling around everywhere. So I can just put my little crimp tubes right down here. Let's get a nicer kind of centered spot on that. And this is a number 2 crimp tube, and I know to use a number 2 crimp tube because it tells me right here on my spool of wire, right? Number 2 crimp tube. If I wanted to use a number 1 crimp bead, I could do that also. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to use a wire guardian. Now, for those of you who don't know what a wire guardian is, it's this little horseshoe shaped guy. And what this does is it does a bunch of different things. The first is that I like how they look. Before anything else, I think they look really nice. Second, they build in the proper amount of wiggle room between your crimp and your clasp. And third, and perhaps most importantly, they help reduce the abrasion that can happen against your clasp. So it really helps, again, in talking about the construction of your jewelry. It helps make it more durable and long lasting. So I strung up one end and I'm coming back down the other end. And before I string it back through that crimp tube, I'm going to grab a tag. And that is where the tag comes in, the tag portion of my clasp. And of course, my nails are making it a little difficult for me to get that guy out here. So I do a lot of fishing things out with my chain nose pliers. So if ever you struggle with getting findings out of a little case like that, your chain nose pliers are probably going to be your best friends. So now I'm going to go through the smaller part of the tag and thread that over my wire guardian. And actually, now I am realizing why I did not use wire guardians originally. Oh no, you know what I did? I'm remembering now, and this is why. So this is my clasp, and you can see how I constructed it. So again, this is kind of an engineering jewelry making a side bar. So you can see I have my wire guardian, a jump ring, my tag, my lobster claw, another jump ring, and another wire guardian. Now, the reason why I have this extra jump ring here is what I just proved to you, because the wire guardian will not fit through the tag. So when we're making jewelry, we face these challenges all the time. Something that we wanted to work in the first place, when we actually get to the construction of it, isn't working. So it might be a pattern that we see in a magazine. It might be a YouTube video that we're following. It might be a just an idea that we had in our design heads. So because the wire guardian didn't fit through the tag and I wanted to have the tag as my clasp, I had to think to myself, well, how am I going to construct this? How am I going to engineer this to make it work? And the way that I did that is I used a jump ring from the variety pack. So luckily we have all of the different rings that we need in this variety pack. I'm going to grab this one right here, and fingers crossed that in the bag of supplies I have on my right hand side, I have more of the right sizes of jump rings. If not, we will be able to improvise that as well. Okay, so what I'm doing with this jump ring is I'm just wiggling it back and forth and back and forth. Let's get that into better focus. Back and forth and back and forth to make sure that the ends are meeting together. So don't assume when you pull a jump ring out of a package that the ends are going to be meeting in the center. Sometimes they do, but it's a dangerous trap to fall into, is just to assume that your jump rings are going to be close. So now I have to get rid of that tag right there. Perfect. And we're going to attach our wire guardian to our jump ring. Okay. Whew, there's a little diversion right there, but we got it all figured out. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread my wire back through the crimp tube, and I'm going to cinch everything up. Now, one of the things that I see people not remembering to do, because not everybody teaches it, is before you do anything else, you want to come in here with your chain nose pliers and just very gently squeeze the two ends of your wire guardian together. You don't want to smush it. You don't want to get it all out of place. You just want to bring those two ends together. It makes it easier to crimp. It makes everything look better. And also sometimes if they're flayed out, they can be a little scratchy against your neck. So you always want to give them just a little gentle squeeze shut. So now the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that these wires are not crossed within this crimp. And I'm going to come in here with my standard crimping pliers. And I'm going to come in the front notch, then the back notch, then the front notch again. And again, a lot of times when people are teaching crimping, they don't come into this front notch. But what that does is it makes a really nice oval shape to allow that second crimping step to be a lot easier and a lot cleaner. And it's actually something that the inventor of the crimping tool recommends for crimping. It just, for whatever reason, it sometimes gets left off of instructions. And it's the step that I think kind of distinguishes the professional from the amateur. I don't like saying that. That's not very nice, but it's one of those next level things that is always good to know. And I did leave, you can see there's just a little teeny, like a millimeter of space. This is where that camera challenge comes in, because we're going to put a crimp cover on that. So I just need that extra little bit of space. So my tail is a little long, so I'm just going to give him a little snippy snip. And then I'm going to tuck that in to the beads here at the top of my design. And I'm going to come around to my other side. And I already have my pendant nice and strung up. And I like the juxtaposition of the pink and the pendant. with the red of the beads. If I were to design it again, would I stick with more of a red color scheme like I did for my original? Possibly I would. I do like how the hearts, these are actually punched out of cardstock with a paper punch, and then I embedded them in the resin. That was a fun learning. That was a fun learning curve for me. But the best part, the best thing that I learned is that using the pinch bail on top to attach it was definitely the way to go. Okay, so now I'm over here on my other side, and I can't teach any jewelry making project without advising against pulling this up, making it as tight as you can, and then crimping. What you actually want to do is lay it down on your surface, and you can do it on your bead board or you can do it on your beading mat, but you want to make sure that you close this with wiggle room inside. And I'm actually going to move my beading board to the side and trying to do that without spilling my coffee, which is always a danger here in the home office. But I want to drive this point home because oftentimes people get very hung up on making sure that there is absolutely no wire being shown or being exposed in their designs. But all that does is it puts way too much pressure on the wire, on the beads, on the clasp, on everything. And the number one reason I think that jewelry does not stand the test of time is because it was strung too tight. So I always build in wiggle room to my bracelets and my necklaces. And one of the ways that I do that is before I crimp, I build it in with how the necklace might be stored or might be worn. So let's first put on my second crimp tube. I'm just coming right over here to my bead board and picking that up. And then I need another wire guardian. So I'm going to come up, around, and through. And because I am using a wire guardian, it is not going to slide through the other half of my clasp. It actually probably will on this on this one. Let's see. We'll experiment. It's always fun to do things real time to see if they're going to work or not. Come on, little guy. Yep. All right. So that one is going to fit. So I don't actually need to find another ring. So that's good. So I'm going to come back down through here. And I do like to string back through 3 or 4 of my beads. So I think one of the things that people try to do, and I know, well, let me say, I know that what I used to do when I first started beading is a couple of things. Not only would I want to make sure that I conserved as much wire as humanly possible. So then I would get up here and try to like pull through just the littlest teeniest bit of wire here so I didn't waste any, but that's frustrating, right? Has anybody had that experience? It's much better to have a little bit more wire here. This is probably too much, but a couple of inches just to be able to pull everything up snug and nicely. And you can see I have my bracelet or my necklace in the round shape. And in fact, I'm going to give it a little bit more wiggle room, because I know that the trade-off between pulling this up as tight as humanly possible and having it be more durable through the test of time, I would rather it last than have my wire super, super tight up in there. So once again, I'm going to come in here and just gently squeeze my wire guardian shut. And I'm going to come through with my standard crimping pliers. And I'm going to come in the front. Let's make sure I'm doing that right in the center. And then I'm going to go in the back jaw. And again, I'm crimping a little faster than usual these days because we did just do that huge treatise on crimping where I went over this over and over and over and over and over again ad nauseum. But I feel like there are certain things with crimping that you can never say too many times. So I will continue to say them over and over again. Okay, so now what I can do is come in here and just snip that end. And I can tuck that into my bead. Yep, got it. And a couple more things. I'm not quite done yet because the first thing is that I want to add that tag. I have my jump ring here, but really what I want is to have the tag to be my clasp. So now I know that that jump ring is going to fit through it. So I can open it up, and you always want to open your jump ring. Just looking for where I put my pliers down. I know my beaders out there know that I feel like 50% of the time I am looking for my pliers, and I have literally just put them down. Somehow they walk away. I don't know how they do it, but they do. So I'm going to open up that jump ring. I'm going to slide the little tag on with the small hole. And now I can use that. And could I attach this directly to the jump ring? Sure, I could. I just like how it looks with the tag on there. I don't know, closing and finishing has always been really important to me. And so I can sometimes obsess even more about my clasp and my closure technique than I will on the beads for my design. But that's just me. Okay, so last step, right? We're coming down the home stretch on this one. So I'm going to use a crimp cover and cover, oops. I'm going to use a crimp cover. Sometimes, I don't know, crimp covers don't like my fingers. I feel like they're the fiddliest thing for me. I feel like there's always one thing that's the fiddliest for each beader out there. And for me, it's crimp covers. So I'm just going to come in here and gently using my chain nose pliers. And I like to use my chain nose pliers for this. You can use your mighty crimping pliers as well. And I, honestly, I switch back and forth. Sometimes I do one, sometimes I do the other. Just kind of depends on what I have at the ready and which pliers has walked away from me at any given time. So then over here with the crimp cover as well, and using crimp covers, wire guardians, and then a tag and either a lobster claw or a split ring, no, a spring ring clasp. It's just a really nice way to finish off a piece of jewelry. Again, it's just kind of those little things that separate something that you would buy in a store from something that you have put time and energy and effort and love into making. All right, so now I have everything all done all the way that I like it. And I have a way of being able to hang my really fun resin doodad and turn it into more of a statement piece, more of a piece of jewelry, rather than just having it on a chain. So before I wrap up, I just wanted to show that that bail on a couple of different styles of pendants. So we've already used the round one a lot. Yes, cardstock punched hearts were what I used in this pendant right here. It was I think it was a Martha Stewart all around the page hole punch. And these were actually what was left behind after what you were supposed to have, what you were supposed to use for the actual card, but they worked out so perfectly and they fit the very right size. And then these were part of the, hold on, let me make sure I have the right word, the UV resin craft That whole program in Michaels is where everything else has come from. So this one is actually the most recent one that I made. And I want to show you guys, first of all, because I finally started like getting it so that my resin was starting to turn out a lot better. But what I used in here, I don't know how well that's showing up. There's a little bit of residual glitter and stuff. But this is actually a Swarovski flatback. And it's a checkerboard flatback, but somehow being encapsulated in the resin turned it into a little mirror. Like the checkerboards are all gone. I don't know what the science is behind it, but it's really, really cool looking, in my opinion. And I'm looking forward to turning it into something. So I mentioned that there are 4 different sizes here, and clearly I use the largest ones the most. But I think that we can use the next largest size for this. Let's all cross our fingers and hope, because I did not test this out. So either it will be perfect or yes, I can see my wonderful resin experts are coming in here to answer all of the questions. Like I said, I like making this stuff, but because it's not really of a Beadalon centric product, I get to kind of have that play around ignorance that I think that actually sometimes that can be a strength, because I get to kind of play around and see how it works out. So here that slightly smaller bale is the perfect one. I don't know, there's something about that that's so cool to me. And I feel like I'm almost afraid to go down the rabbit hole of resin, because it's the type of thing that I won't come back from for a while. All right, so now here is the second smallest size. And I am just, everything kind of got all tangled up, so I'm just going to remove them. And it's great that these bales are both soft enough to be able to open up easily, but sturdy enough to be a permanent bale hold. And if you, I don't recommend using glue, because if you do, then you don't get the nice movement anymore. It just becomes stiff. And I think that part of what makes having something dangling pretty and fun is having that movement to it. I like it. I'm just reading through some of the comments to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. Okay, so that is kind of my treatise, my explanation, my class on using the pinch bales to attach a resin pendant and create a piece of jewelry that has just has a little bit more oomph to it. I love a chain. I love having something dangle from a chain, but I also like really, I'm a beader, so I like using more beads in my designs wherever I can. And if I can create something using a whole different system of supplies, wow, that's just icing on the cake. And you can really see now that since I did not add all of the I did not add that extra bead here, this is really, really jacked up. So again, we live and we learn from our mistakes, right? And so now I know that when I'm making this project again, and I really should have known better. You always want to kind of put something underneath that bale just to make sure it's not on the raw wire. It will just add the little something that you need for it to hang professionally. And it looks like there are a lot of people who are agreeing with me on that the rabbit hole of resin it's a good one. It's a good rabbit hole to go in. All right, Lindsay, I think that with that, we're ready to come back up to the forward facing camera. We covered a lot of ground today. I feel like with every project that I start, I I have one thing in mind, but there's so much information that I want to get out to everybody. And then I look through the comments and things spark up in my head. So I really appreciate having everybody hang out with me and stick with me for that long. It was a little bit of a very specific use for a specific finding. But I think that that's good. Sometimes when you go into Michael's and you look at that huge findings wall and you see different things, you think, well, what is this cord end for? What is that bail for? What are these different things for? So if I can help get that finding out of the stash and used in a piece of jewelry, then I feel like my work here is done. So again, my name is Meredith Roddy. I work for Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and you can catch the Michael's classes for Beadalon at 2:00 p.m. on Wednesdays. And you can even find us sometimes on Saturday at 2 p.m. as well. So please go to the Michael's Community Classroom website, and you can see not only all of the Beadalon classes, but all of the makers classes, which I've taken a lot of also, and so inspiring. And then also, as I've mentioned a couple of times, if you go back, you can always rewatch the classes over and over to your heart's content on the Michael's Community Classroom YouTube page. So without any further ado, I will thank you all so very much. Finn was a very, very good boy here for class today. I've been keeping him very tired. So a tired golden retriever is always a well-behaved golden retriever. So that is all for me today. And until next time, happy beading.